Imperfection is not a flaw, but proof of our humanity. And when we understand this truth, life begins to feel lighter. So often, we place ourselves under the crushing weight of unrealistic standards, believing that the only way to be worthy is to achieve perfection in everything we do. We measure ourselves against impossible ideals, polishing our lives for others while hiding the struggles that make us real. But humanity is not about being flawless, it's about being authentic. Our cracks, mistakes, and shortcomings don't make us less. They make us deeply, undeniably human. Think about the moments when you've connected most strongly with others. It rarely happens when everything is going perfectly or when someone seems to have it all together. Instead, those moments of connection often arise when someone shares a story of struggle, failure, or doubt. In their imperfection, we recognize our own, and a bond is created that perfection could never produce. Perfection isolates us, while imperfection unites us. It is the shared acknowledgement of being human that builds bridges between hearts. When we see imperfection as proof of humanity, we release ourselves from the exhausting performance of trying to appear flawless. That performance is heavy, and it keeps us from living fully and freely. We start to fear judgment so deeply that we hide parts of ourselves that others might actually need to see. The truth is, people don't fall in love with our perfection. They fall in love with our realness. Our laughter, our tears, our quirks, and even our scars become the language of authenticity that others can understand. Embracing imperfection also invites self-compassion. Too often, we are our harshest critics, berating ourselves for every misstep and flaw. But if imperfection is what makes us human, then why punish ourselves for being what we are meant to be? When we show ourselves grace, we create space for growth, healing, and courage. Self-compassion doesn't mean avoiding responsibility. It means understanding that failure and flaws are part of the journey. They are not signs of weakness, but reminders of our shared humanity. Perfection, on the other hand, is a lonely illusion. It sets up walls between people, because when we try to project flawless lives, others feel they cannot relate to us. They begin to compare their real, messy existence with our carefully curated appearance. And this creates distance. But when we dare to show imperfection, we allow others to exhale, to feel seen, and to recognize that they are not alone. In this way, imperfection becomes a gift, one that invites others to step into the comfort of authenticity. Consider the beauty of art, music, or nature. None of them are perfect, yet their imperfections make them powerful and breathtaking. A cracked voice in a song can carry more emotion than a perfectly tuned note. A crooked tree can be more striking than one that grows straight. The same is true of us. Our imperfections make us memorable, relatable, and beautiful in ways perfection never could. Humanity is not polished. It is textured, layered, and filled with contrasts. That is what gives it depth and meaning. When we embrace our imperfection as proof of our humanity, we reclaim our power. We no longer need to chase the unattainable or wear masks to earn approval. We can stand as we are, vulnerable yet strong, flawed yet whole, imperfect yet enough. It is in this acceptance that we find true freedom. Imperfection is not the thing we must overcome. It is the thing that makes life real, relationships meaningful, and existence worth living. It is, at its core, the essence of being human. Connection grows through vulnerability, and this truth shapes the very foundation of human relationships. We are wired for connection, yet so often we avoid it by trying to present only the polished parts of ourselves. Vulnerability, the willingness to be seen as we truly are, is the doorway to real intimacy. When we hide behind walls of perfection, others may admire us, but they cannot truly know us. To be known, to be loved, and to be understood, we must let others see the unguarded parts of our lives. Vulnerability requires courage because it means stepping into uncertainty without guarantees of acceptance. It means sharing our fears, admitting our mistakes, or confessing our doubts, even when we risk rejection. Yet in that openness lies the power of connection, because vulnerability whispers to others, you're not alone. When someone admits their struggles, it creates an invitation for others to lay down their own masks. It is in this mutual honesty that bonds of trust and empathy are formed. Think about the moments when you felt closest to another person. Chances are it wasn't when everything was picture perfect, but when someone allowed you to glimpse their raw emotions. Perhaps a friend shared their heartbreak, or a family member admitted their fears, and suddenly the relationship grew deeper. Vulnerability strips away the illusion of perfection and replaces it with authenticity. And authenticity is the soil in which real connection grows strong roots. The fear of vulnerability often comes from the belief that people will reject us if they see our flaws. But the opposite is usually true. When we reveal our imperfections, people connect with us more deeply. Why? Because we reflect back to them their own struggles, their own humanity. Perfection creates admiration from a distance, but vulnerability creates closeness. It tells people that we don't have to pretend, and neither do they. That's when genuine connection becomes possible. In a world that rewards appearances, choosing vulnerability feels radical. Social media, advertisements, and cultural expectations often pressure us to appear perfect at all times. But behind every polished image is a story of uncertainty, pain, and resilience. When someone is brave enough to share those hidden chapters, it breaks the cycle of comparison. Vulnerability reminds us that we are all fighting battles, and it bridges the gap that perfection builds between us. Vulnerability also transforms leadership, teamwork, and collaboration. Leaders who pretend to know everything create distance, but those who admit mistakes build trust. Teams that allow vulnerability create environments of innovation because people feel safe to take risks without fear of shame. Vulnerability turns workplaces, families, and friendships into communities where honesty thrives. It proves that connection is not built on having all the answers, but on daring to share the questions. When we embrace vulnerability, we discover that connection is not about impressing others, but about relating to them. True belonging never comes from presenting a perfect self. It comes from showing up fully, flaws and all. Each time we dare to be vulnerable, we strengthen the invisible threads that bind us to others. We realize that our stories, even the messy ones, have power because they echo in the hearts of those who hear them. And it is through this courageous openness that connection not only grows but flourishes. Perfection creates distance, but imperfection creates intimacy, and this truth explains why human connection thrives on authenticity. When we present a flawless version of ourselves, we unknowingly build walls that separate us from others. People may admire us for our achievements or polished image, but admiration is not the same as closeness. True intimacy grows in spaces where vulnerability and imperfection are allowed to exist. The more real we are, the more others feel safe to be real with us. When we constantly strive to be perfect, we leave no room for others to relate to us. Perfection suggests a standard that few can meet, and this often leaves people feeling inadequate in our presence. It pushes them away because they compare their real lives to our curated image. Imperfection, on the other hand, levels the playing field. It tells others, I'm human too, and my life is not without flaws. That message creates comfort, closeness, and genuine understanding. Think about friendships or relationships that have meant the most to you. Chances are they were built not on perfect moments, but on imperfect ones. They were built when someone admitted they were scared, when someone cried in your presence, or when you laughed over shared mistakes. These moments strip away any illusions and replace them with trust. Intimacy doesn't grow in polished perfection. It grows in shared vulnerability. Perfection can be intimidating because it creates an illusion of control. When someone appears to have it all together, it leaves little space for others to step in with empathy or support, but imperfection opens the door to compassion. When we reveal our struggles, others find the courage to offer kindness, and in giving kindness, they feel more deeply connected. Intimacy grows because imperfection gives people something real to hold on to. In relationships, imperfection also removes the pressure to perform. When two people can admit they are flawed, they create a safe environment where love can exist without conditions. They stop expecting each other to meet impossible standards and instead focus on growth together. That's when intimacy deepens, because love is not tested by perfection, it is tested by honesty. Imperfection makes space for forgiveness, patience, and understanding, the true ingredients of lasting closeness. Perfection tends to hide the truth, while imperfection reveals it. When we are willing to show our flaws, we invite others into the real story of our lives. We admit that life is messy, and that messiness is what makes it meaningful. People don't bond over flawless victories as much as they bond over shared struggles. The honesty of imperfection breaks down barriers and strengthens the ties of empathy, trust, and love. The intimacy created through imperfection is powerful because it builds a sense of belonging. When someone shows us their imperfect self and we accept it, we send the message that they don't need to earn love through performance. That acceptance becomes the foundation of deep connection. In this way, imperfection is not a weakness, but a gift. It creates a bridge between hearts, a bridge that perfection could never build, because perfection hides the very thing that makes us human. Worthiness is not earned through perfection because our value is not dependent on flawless performance or constant achievement. From childhood, many of us are taught to believe that love, respect, and belonging must be earned by meeting certain expectations. We grow up thinking that only when we succeed, look a certain way, or avoid failure will we finally be enough. But worthiness is not something we acquire. It is something we already have. It exists within us simply because we are human. When we tie worthiness to perfection, we create a dangerous cycle of shame and self-doubt. Every mistake feels like proof that we are not good enough, and every flaw feels like evidence of failure. Instead of celebrating progress, we punish ourselves for not meeting unrealistic standards. This mindset leaves us exhausted, anxious, and disconnected from joy. But when we recognize that worthiness is not conditional, we begin to free ourselves from this trap. The truth is, we don't need to prove our worthiness to anyone, not even to ourselves. We are worthy regardless of how much we achieve, how we look, or what others think. This understanding creates space for self-acceptance, which is the foundation for growth and connection. When we believe we are enough as we are, we stop chasing external validation. Instead, we learn to live from a place of authenticity rather than performance. Perfectionism tricks us into thinking that if we can just get everything right, we will finally be accepted. But the reality is, perfection never guarantees love or belonging. People are drawn to authenticity, not flawlessness. When we try to be perfect, we become distant and unrelatable. But when we embrace our imperfections and still claim our worth, we inspire others to do the same. Worthiness grows when we dare to be real, not when we hide behind masks. Living with a sense of unconditional worth also transforms how we handle failure. Instead of seeing mistakes as proof of inadequacy, we see them as part of learning. Failure no longer becomes a judgment on who we are, but simply feedback on what we tried. This shift gives us resilience because we stop attaching our identity to outcomes. We realize that our worth is constant, even when our circumstances are not. Believing in our worthiness also changes how we relate to others. When we feel enough, we no longer seek approval desperately or compete for validation. We can give and receive love without fear of rejection. We stop comparing ourselves endlessly because we understand that worth is not a scarce resource. It belongs to everyone equally. This creates relationships rooted in acceptance, trust, and mutual respect. Ultimately, worthiness is about embracing ourselves fully, flaws and all. It is choosing to believe that nothing needs to be added or perfected for us to deserve love and belonging. The world may pressure us to constantly prove our value, but our worth does not come from society's standards. It comes from within, and it has been with us from the very beginning. The moment we understand this, we release the illusion of perfection and step into the freedom of being truly ourselves. Failure and mistakes are the foundation of resilience and growth because they teach us lessons that success alone could never provide. When everything goes smoothly, we rarely stop to reflect or adapt. But when we stumble, we are forced to look deeper, to examine what went wrong, and to discover new ways forward. Every failure carries with it an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, and more courageous. Without mistakes, resilience would never have the chance to be born. Mistakes reveal our humanity, and in doing so, they strip away the illusion that life should be perfect. Society often conditions us to avoid failure at all costs, but in avoiding it, we also avoid growth. The most powerful stories of success are built on a foundation of setbacks and perseverance. When we see failure not as the end, but as a stepping stone, we begin to reframe it as a teacher. Each fall becomes an invitation to rise with greater strength than before. Resilience does not come from living a life free of failure. It comes from surviving failure and moving forward anyway. Each time we get back up after falling, we prove to ourselves that we are stronger than we once believed. This process builds a quiet confidence that no external praise can replace. It is the repeated practice of standing up after mistakes that makes us resilient. In this way, failure is not a barrier, but a pathway to growth. Some of the world's greatest innovators, leaders, and creators are remembered not for never failing, but for how they responded to failure. Their resilience was born from trial and error, from persistence in the face of rejection or defeat. If they had given up at their first mistake, their breakthroughs would have never existed. Their stories remind us that resilience is not a gift reserved for the lucky. It is a skill built through practice. Every mistake we endure sharpens that skill. Mistakes also invite humility, which is essential for growth. When we fail, we are reminded that we do not have all the answers, and that realization keeps us open to learning. Humility softens the sting of failure by reminding us that imperfection is part of the human experience. It allows us to shift from shame to curiosity, asking, what can I learn from this? Instead of, what's wrong with me? This shift is where true personal growth begins. Failure teaches empathy as well, because once we have struggled, we understand the struggles of others more deeply. Our mistakes make us more compassionate, reminding us that everyone is fighting their own battles. When we share our failures, we create spaces where others feel safe to share theirs. In this way, mistakes not only build our individual resilience, but also strengthen our collective humanity. Growth becomes not just a personal journey, but a shared experience. At its core, failure reminds us that life is not about avoiding pain or mistakes, but about what we do with them. Growth is never a straight line. It is a series of rises and falls, setbacks and breakthroughs. Each mistake adds depth to our story and resilience to our character. By embracing failure as a teacher, we free ourselves from the illusion of perfection. And in doing so, we discover that resilience and growth are not found in never falling, but in always finding the courage to rise again. Imperfection gives others permission to be real, because when we show our authentic selves, we break the illusion that everyone must appear flawless. Too often, people hide their struggles out of fear of being judged, creating a cycle of silence where no one feels safe enough to be vulnerable. But when one person chooses honesty over perfection, it creates space for others to do the same. Authenticity is contagious, and it spreads through courage. By daring to be real, we invite others into a deeper connection. When we allow others to see our flaws, we give them permission to embrace their own without shame. Our imperfections act as mirrors, reflecting back the truth that everyone is human and no one has it all figured out. This reminder eases the pressure of comparison, helping people see that their struggles are not signs of weakness, but part of the human journey. Instead of trying to live up to impossible standards, they feel free to simply be themselves. That freedom is where connection grows. Perfection creates distance because it projects an image of control that feels unattainable. Others may admire it, but they cannot relate to it. Imperfection, however, closes that gap by showing that life is messy for everyone. When someone shares their failures or vulnerabilities, it bridges the divide between isolation and belonging. People begin to think, if they can be honest about their struggles, maybe I can too. In that moment, authenticity spreads like a spark igniting hope. Think about the comfort you feel when someone admits they've made a mistake or faced a fear similar to yours. That admission creates a bond, a sense of solidarity that perfection could never achieve. Suddenly, you don't feel as though you're walking your journey alone. The courage of one person to show their imperfections becomes the permission slip others need to release their own masks. That's how authenticity ripples outward, touching more lives than we often realize. When leaders, teachers, or mentors embrace imperfection, they model a new way of being that others can follow. A leader who admits not having all the answers creates trust because honesty always feels safer than pretense. A teacher who shares past struggles shows students that mistakes are not the end, but part of learning. These examples prove that showing our flaws is not a weakness, but a powerful act of influence. By normalizing imperfection, they empower others to do the same. Imperfection also fosters empathy because when we share our struggles, people connect to us on a human level. They no longer see us as untouchable or distant, but as relatable and approachable. Empathy thrives in honesty because vulnerability speaks a universal language. When we see someone else's cracks, we recognize our own, and the connection becomes deeper. In this way, our imperfections don't just give permission for authenticity, they also create a culture of compassion. At the heart of it, showing our imperfections reminds everyone that it's okay to be human. Life is not meant to be lived behind a mask of control or a performance of perfection. By daring to reveal our real selves, we give others the freedom to do the same, and together we build communities rooted in truth rather than appearances. Imperfection is not something to hide, it is something to share, because it liberates not only ourselves, but also those who witness it. This shared authenticity becomes the foundation for trust, connection, and belonging. Our scars are not weaknesses, but stories of strength, because each mark we carry is proof that we have endured. Life does not spare anyone from hardship, and every challenge leaves behind a trace of what we've survived. Too often, we see scars, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, as flaws that diminish us. But in truth, they are reminders of resilience, courage, and perseverance. Each scar is a chapter in our story that speaks of battles fought and lessons learned. Scars show that pain was real, but they also show that healing was possible. They symbolize that while we may have been broken, we were never destroyed. The wound is closed, the hurt has transformed, and what remains is evidence of survival. Rather than hiding these scars, we can embrace them as symbols of our journey. They don't tell the world that we are weak. They tell the world that we have risen above what once tried to break us. When we look at our scars, they remind us of our inner strength and capacity to endure. They become proof that we can face hard moments and still move forward. This knowledge gives us confidence when we encounter new challenges, because we can look back and say, I've survived before, and I can survive again. Scars become a source of courage, guiding us into the future with faith in our resilience. They are not signs of fragility, but evidence of power. Sharing our scars also has the power to heal others. When we tell our stories of pain and recovery, we remind people that they are not alone in their struggles. Someone who is currently hurting may see hope in the fact that we have endured similar pain and come out stronger. Our scars become bridges of empathy, connecting us through shared humanity. They tell others that healing is not just possible, it is real and within reach. Scars also shift our perspective on beauty and strength. Instead of valuing only flawless appearances, they teach us to see beauty in resilience and depth. The most inspiring people are not those who never struggled, but those who bear their scars with courage and grace. They embody the truth that strength is not found in avoiding hardship, but in surviving it. Scars become reminders that beauty often comes from what we've overcome, not from what we've avoided. By embracing our scars, we also release ourselves from shame. Hiding them suggests that we are still defined by our pain, but revealing them shows that we are defined by our recovery. Shame loses its power when we accept our scars as part of our story. Instead of weakening us, they strengthen our identity by adding layers of meaning to who we are. Each scar, whether visible or invisible, becomes a mark of wisdom and growth. Ultimately, scars are living testaments that we are survivors, not victims. They are not the end of the story, but the evidence that we kept going when life tried to stop us. They are not weaknesses to conceal, but badges of honor that reflect the battles we've endured. When we see our scars this way, we step into a new kind of strength, one that does not deny our pain, but transforms it into power. In every scar lies proof of courage, healing, and unbreakable spirit.